The numbers don't lie. If you are renting a home in the UK, you could be financially stranded in retirement. You might have worked hard, saved into your pensions, invested into your ISAs. However, the rising costs of rent as well as the rising costs of living overall could over time outpace your income. This feels in many ways like a disaster waiting to happen for many people. Today I want to explore a sensitive topic: why renting in retirement could be a pretty bad idea for people when it comes to their retirement. Now, I'm very aware that many people are not renting because they just feel like it. For a lot of people, it's all they can do. They've been trying to save for a deposit, but they absolutely cannot do it at the moment. Or they might have been saving for years, but just haven't quite built up that deposit. For other people, renting is the only choice. They might have bad credit and what have you. Or for some people, it might even be a choice that they've chosen to rent instead of buying. However, what I want to do with today's video is really unpack some numbers for us to consider. Just some simple calculations to help us almost put the spotlight on this idea of what waits for us ahead in the future. What's the challenges we might face if we carry on renting only to the point where we get to retirement and might find ourselves struggling. Today's video is going to be split into 5 parts. The first is going to be looking at the retirement cost crisis. So, talking about the numbers and making it real. Then we're going to talk about the ownership advantage, why building equity for stability is a good thing if you own. Thirdly, I want to look at the emotional and the financial toll of renting in retirement. And then fourth, I want to look at why renting isn't always a choice for people. For some people, they just have to because it's their only scenario. And then fifth, I want to talk about some actionable steps that renters and people who own or maybe future homeowners could take to start to prepare for their retirement. And then finally, I want to talk about why time is of the essence and why it's very important for us all to begin to plan for our future retirement sooner rather than later. If this video sounds like something that you are enjoying and this topic is very relevant to you, I'd really appreciate it if you simply hit that like button, because that really gives me a signal and to other people that this video is one that you are enjoying as well. My name's Ken of the Humble Penny and Financial Joy Academy. I run this platform with my beautiful wife Mary, and we've been doing it for many years with the goal of helping you ultimately create a life of financial joy, which is a life that balances your goals of wealth as well as prioritizing well-being on that journey. Okay, like I said, I'm going to keep this video really casual, and I'm going to look at my phone once in a while just to make sure I'm on track. But let's begin with the very first point, which is the retirement cost crisis, looking at the numbers specifically. Here are the hard facts. According to Zoopla, the average UK rent is £1,223 per month. Okay? In London, it's a staggering £2,200 per month. Now pay attention to that. Let's just stick to that average number of £1,223 per month. Over a 20-year retirement period, a renter paying that £1,223 per month, just keeping things simple and keeping it fixed for a minute, would need £293,520 just to cover rent. Okay? And that's just assuming that rents don't rise, which is, of course, highly unlikely because rents rise every year. Now, let's then compare that to the average retirement savings that people have. The average private pension pot in the UK is £166,000, according to Vanguard, who are quoting some numbers for the Office for National Statistics, the ONS. That number that I just quoted falls to 115,000 among women. Okay? Data from the Wealth and Assets Survey shows that for those who are retired, looking at ISA pots specifically, the average ISA pot in the UK for those who are retired was £23,000 in terms of value. Okay, so keeping things really simple, because I know we can look at various measurement factors like median and what have you. I'm going to stick to the average for a minute. Let's assume that if we added the average pension pot and added the average ISA pot for a minute, 166,000 plus 23,000, we would end up with 189,000 as a pot for somebody to retire on average. Now, if you assume that they were drawing down this pension pot over a period of 20 years for simplicity, on a straight line basis, again, keeping things really simple, just so we can understand the maths, this will create income of around £9,450. Now, I know the geeks among you will go, oh, but Ken, that money will be invested and it will compound and blah, blah, blah. Yes, it will. But let's just pay attention for a minute at simple numbers, okay? Pay attention to that number, £9,450 in income per year. Now, let's assume that you got the full state pension, which you probably might not get. You know, most people probably wouldn't get the full state pension. The full state pension is around £11,502 thereabouts per year. If you added that to that £9,450, you will arrive at an annual income, again for simple fag packet maths, of around £20,952 for the average retiree. Average income, right? Now let's then compare that to rent, right? So pay attention. Compare that to your outgoings. Let's say you're paying that fixed rent of £1,223 a month and expect it to rise. Rent alone would take up, from your £20,952, you would take up £14,676 a year. That will be gone just to rent. Before you then have a few thousands left, maybe about £6,000 thereabouts, left for everything else. Council tax, which I don't know about you, but mine's rising and keeps rising, and so do everybody else I know. Council tax keeps rising, food bills are rising, energy bills continue to be high, right, and rising over time. Then you have potentially future healthcare costs, as well as many other costs before you've even factored in, you know, leisure and travel and what have you. And then you have the challenge that if you don't get the full state pension, or even don't get the state pension, then the budget is completely bust, basically, because renting will be a disaster in these scenarios if you don't have a decent retirement pot set aside. Yeah, if your ISAs and your pensions aren't gonna cover future living costs. Okay. Now, before carrying on to part 2 of the video, I want to just take a moment and say, if you are enjoying today's video, please do us a favor, over there somewhere, please hit the subscribe button, because every single subscriber means a lot to us and helps our channel to grow and reach more people. Really, really appreciate that. Now, part 2 of the video is now looking at the ownership advantage, so building equity for stability. Now, let's look at a homeowner scenario. I'm just casting this picture because it's important to just mention this other perspective. So by the time a homeowner comes to retire, they, you would expect, most likely would have paid off their mortgage, which is one of the reasons why I personally, my wife and I prioritized paying off our mortgage early, and we did it in 7 years. If you've not seen that video, I'll link to it below and above. Feel free to go and check it out if you want to and see how we did that. So a typical homeowner, you expect, might have paid off their mortgage when it comes to typical retirement age. Okay, and bear in mind, not everybody retires at typical retirement age, because some people become ill and then have to retire early as a forced retirement. But that's a whole different, situation, and we'll come to that. But my point is, with somebody who owns a home, if they've paid off their home, then their living costs will drop massively to the point where, you could argue that the average living cost might be, depending on your lifestyle, obviously, might be anything between £1,000 to £2,000 per month to cover, food, council tax, maintenance costs, all those various things that people might need in retirement. And over the 20-year retirement period, comparing to somebody who's renting, that drop in their living costs will matter massively. It will matter a great deal. And let's not forget, they still own the home, to which they might have built up hundreds of thousands of pounds worth of equity, which can then potentially be released, could be passed on one day. They might downsize potentially and take some of that money out to fund their lifestyles or to fund care costs, which will become a bigger concern for people as they get older. Okay. Now, let's talk about part 3 of the video now, which is looking at the emotional and financial toll of renting in retirement. Renting, as you know, isn't just about the financial costs. It's the uncertainty that comes with renting that most people worry about. As a renter, if you're somebody who's renting, you're obviously renting that property from a landlord, and that landlord has that, has the need to once in a while increase rents. So you face rents going up, or they might want to sell their property for their own personal reasons. They might be downsizing their portfolio, or they might be moving on from renting property, or whatever. They might just want to sell their property. And so you then face that risk where you might get turfed out, or you have obviously rents going up naturally over time. So there's that to consider. But there's more things to consider, actually. Looking at research, according to Shelter, homelessness charity. They say here, Shelter says that Shelter UK reports that 28% of older private tenants feared that they might be evicted by their landlord. Researchers said that this equates to around 400,000 people across England. This is looking at older tenants, people who are above the age of 55. Pay attention to this. Then they say that they also warn that over 55s are served, currently, according to current data, are served an eviction notice every 16 minutes. Look, I don't know about you, but for me, if I'm in my retirement age, okay, I'm thinking about parents now. Think about your parents. And a lot of people's parents are renting, particularly in a lot of ethnic minority communities. Take the black community, for example. A lot of parents are renting. Would you like to see your parents facing such emotional turmoil in their retirement age? Or would you like to face such emotional and financial turmoil in your retirement age? This is something worth bringing up, because for a lot of people, this is a reality. And for a lot of people, they're actually not thinking about these points. It's somewhere in the back of their mind. We're like, I know someday this thing called retirement will come, but there isn't really a plan. There isn't really a vehicle. And I'll come to a plan in a minute, because this video is not just about, trying to highlight things. I'm not here to, point fingers or shame or blame or no. You will know if you've been following our channel. I'm all about really encouraging people to make the right financial decisions. And this is one of them worth paying attention to, okay? So my point is that there's the reality that, renting is unpredictable. And obviously over time, rents have risen massively, depending on what part of the country or what part of the world you are living in. It remains a challenge for people. And for some people who don't have a home, it might even lead to other things. It might lead to homelessness and other factors, okay? Now, let's look at part 4 of this video, which is then me talking about the fact that renting isn't always a choice, okay? I really want to pause here and, and just acknowledge that buying a home is not for everybody, okay? So I'm not here to say, you must go and buy a home. No. I'm not saying that. And the reason for that is, for some people, they just don't have the deposit. They just don't have the capacity to build up that deposit. They don't have, a good credit profile, which has meant that they are not able to get on the property ladder. And then for other people, they just want the flexibility. They don't want a house. They just want to rent. They're doing it that's what they want to do for their own lives. And that's okay. That's the point I'm making here. What I'm trying to do with this video and this segment of the video is to understand that there are risks when it comes to renting, when it comes to retirement, and planning ahead to protect for the future is really what matters. If buying isn't your option, that's okay. You can begin to plan for the future to make sure that you are actually okay. So to that point, here are some actionable steps that are worth mentioning for both renters and future homeowners more generally. Okay, so the very first point I'd say is to maximize your savings. Okay, so here I'm talking about use up all these tax efficient accounts. You see, like the ISA, you might have seen in the last budget, there's been a big focus on, pensions and pensions being targeted. ISAs, in my personal opinion, have become, and I've said this for a very long time, ISAs are very important. If you don't use your ISA allowances, tax-free allowances, you're going to lose them. So where possible, do your best to max out as much of your ISA allowances as you can. And If you want to put money into pensions, of course, put money into a pension and build up a retirement pot, particularly if your employer is paying into it, you get match contributions and all those things. Get as much of that free money as possible. But my point is, with maximizing your savings, is aim for at least 15% of your income annually to be saved and invested for a future retirement outcome. Because that retirement will come sooner than you think. I say to people, look, if you think you've got 20 years, assume it's 15. If you think you've got 15 years, assume it's 10 years. There needs to be a sense of urgency. That means that you are taking some bold steps now and, making some sacrifices to prepare for that future reality. Tip 2 is to then invest wisely. So that money shouldn't just sit in your ISAs or in your pensions. You actually need to do something with it. You need to put that money to work. So investing in stocks, naturally, is what we've always talked about, whether it's an index fund or an ETF. If you don't want anything overly risky, these will help you to diversify your investments and grow your wealth over time. And then this way, even if you choose to rent out of just your own choice, you're like, you know what, can't be bothered with buying a house because buying isn't perfect. And by the way, I've made a video called Why You Should Not Buy a House. Explaining the reasons. There's certain things that people overlook and get too excited about getting on Property Ladder. If you want to watch that video, I'll link to it below and above. Go and watch it. And then once you've watched that video, I also made a counter video saying, here's why you should buy a house. Because there's always two arguments. I always hate all these videos that get put out there telling you, don't buy a house very blindly, but not telling you the other part of the argument. So I've done two videos. So when you watch that video I mentioned earlier, please watch the part 2. That's also linked to that video to have the full picture. But my point is, investing wisely is absolutely key. Whether you are somebody who chooses to rent or whether you're somebody who is renting and hoping to get on the property ladder, it's key to be prioritizing this investing and putting your money to work. Number 3 is plan for flexibility. So if you're renting long term, focus on building a bigger safety net. Here I'm talking about 6 to 12 months worth of living expenses put aside and making sure you have that financial cushion and stability in the event that various things happen. And then I've put tip number 4 to downsize strategically. Whether you own or whether you rent, downsizing could potentially free up resources and, reduce future housing costs, making this whole area of your cost of living being manageable in retirement. And then the final part, which is part 6, is then saying why time is of the essence. The key takeaway from this video is simple. Renting is not inherently bad. I'm going to make that very clear, and I hope you got to this part of the video because, people watch a video for a little bit and then they jump in the comments and just say stuff without even watching the full video. Renting is not inherently bad, but it's risky if you don't plan ahead. This is the key point I want to drum home today because we're all getting older. I'm now in my 40s. At one point I was in my 30s and 20s and, retirement was just like, yeah, it's sometime in the future. Even though I was saving and investing, but it felt far away. But I've seen people, like I was speaking to a friend of mine only yesterday and he was like, you know what? One of his colleagues at work got signed off work. Got signed off. Illness, working, right? Signed off, right? What does that mean? If you're signed up for months, it puts your future job at risk. It puts all your plans at risk, really, because health is wealth. Health is everything. So the key thing is to begin to plan ahead. And don't assume that your retirement will be at 67. Don't assume that the government and the state will come and save you and give you a state pension. Those things might not happen. So you need to create your own game plan and begin to make certain sacrifices today to prepare for a future you want to arrive at. I've said this many times. The only reason why you might be looking after yourself, looking after your health, and making sure that things are good today is because you want to arrive at a future. You want to arrive at some time in the future where you'll be alive and enjoying the fruits of your labor. So why not prepare for that future financially as well? Okay. Now, I want to wrap up by pointing to other resources we've created. I made a very specific video, and the video is titled, How to Retire in 10 Years, Starting with Zero Today. So head over and watch this extra video here if you really want to get started with this journey of preparing for your retirement and that sort of thing. But overall, I just want to say thank you guys so much for watching today's video. I want to hear from you guys in the comments. Like, is this subject of retirement planning and the dangers of renting in retirement something that you are concerned about? If you're somebody who's renting, or is it not something you even think about or worry about? Either way, I want to see both people. You know, I want to see whoever you are, whether you've got a home or whether you're renting. I want to see you guys jump in the comments and offer a perspective. Beyond that, thanks again for watching. And as always, in all things, be thankful and seek joy. Take care and bye for now.